what do you do to quiet your nerves and bring you some type of peace? What is it that you're using? Like certain people say, "Oh, I'm dependent on the Supreme Court or whatever." What little gems are you using to make you feel comfortable that we can survive this?
I mean, I am not comfortable that we can survive this. I'm not.
So we tell the stories to lift each other, give hope to push us further, and encourage one another.
KARINE Jean Pierre is an accomplished political advisor and author. Born in Fort-de-France, Martinique, to Haitian immigrant parents, she moved to New York City at the age of 5. She holds a bachelor's degree from the New York Institute of Technology and a Master of Public Affairs from Columbia University. Jean Pierre has an extensive career in politics, having served as a regional political director for John Edwards' 2004 presidential campaign, and later in the Obama administration as a regional political director. She also worked as a senior advisor and a national spokeswoman for MoveOn.org and served as a political analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. In 2020, she was the chief of staff for Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. On May 13, 2022, Jean Pierre made history as the first Black and openly LGBTQ+ person to serve as White House press secretary, a role she held until January 20th, 2025. She's also the author of Moving Forward, a story of hope, hard work, and promise of America.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes Beauty. I am your host, Derek Monroe, and we have with us today, she is an amazing young lady. She is an author. She is been the White House press secretary for under the Biden administration. But before that, she had many jobs running campaigns. We have with us none other than KARINE Jean Pierre. I love saying your name.
I know. When you were introducing me, I was like, oh yeah, he told me he loves saying my name.
I love to see it roll off my tongue. KARINE Jean Pierre.
Very well done.
Oh, well, thank you.
Very
Listen,
French of you.
I'm trying. That's the only French I know. Except for French fry.
More. I think you know more French.
French fry, oui.
Voulez-vous.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. So, I tell every guest that I'm glad we finally got to do this. We have been working on this, and it's perfect timing because your book, Moving Forward,
the paperback version
is going to paperback.
It's going to paperback version.
Yes.
Yeah, it's coming out late May 20th. I'm very, very excited. I first wrote the book. The book first was published in 2019.
Yes.
And it's taken like 5 years, almost 6 years to get this book out in paperback because I've had many jobs.
Exactly.
in those years.
And then did you think about doing an insert into it? Because you have a huge...
So what we did is there is a new cover. So the cover is new.
Okay.
So it's different than the hardcover. And I did an afterword, I think it's called, an afterword. And so the afterword is just a couple pages and it updates what I've been doing the last 5 years.
Right.
So people get the memoir, they get that piece of it too, and then it's a new cover.
Right.
So I'm excited about the paperback version of it. It's nice to finally get that out. It should have been out years ago, but again, I've been a little busy for the last,
Just a tad bit.
Tiny bit busy for the last 5 years. So we're happy to just finally do that and get that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think people should really realize that even though it was done in 2019, especially if you are politically engaged at all, that is still a very important book to read because
that's the
you
point
talk
of the book.
about your getting into politics, you talk about working with different people, you give little nuggets on if you have interest in politics, these are the things you should do. So I think it's a great...
So the reason I wrote the book, and I'm so glad you said that, is when I was, getting into the more public space and becoming a spokesperson and being on TV a lot more, and I was also teaching at Columbia University as an adjunct professor as well. Young people would come up to me and they're like, how did you get to work in the White House? How did you, how did you do this? How do I get involved politically? And so I decided to tell a little bit of my story. It's a memoir, but also it has some guides, right? A little bit of guidance, a little how to get into politics, but ultimately it's up to that person. You can do it in any way, any variation at any age, and there's no one path. But I wanted to give a little bit of advice on how to do that.
Well, I thought you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
And then small little stuff. I mean, well, what's funny is earlier in the book, you talk about reading papers, and you said reading papers was very important.
Yeah,
that you should not overlook reading an actual newspaper.
Actual newspaper. I know we're so into online social media and getting our information that way, but actually picking up a physical paper, you can get a lot more from that than reading it online. You should do both. I think you should do both. I'm not saying do one or the other, but try it out, because I think there's a lot in reading an actual physical newspaper, and it's not me being 100 years old and being old, but it's more of like
there's some gems that you miss.
Gems that you might miss, and I think it does give you a different way of looking at the news as well. And nowadays you have to be your own fact checker, right? Because the information you get on social media sometimes, sadly, you gotta make sure it's the right information. And so that gives you other ways to get news, other ways to get information, and it pushes you to look at a variation of news sources, if you will.
Okay, so what made you name the book Moving Forward?
It's a good question. I was thinking about that. It's so funny you said that. I was thinking about that as the paperback is coming out. I have not really talked about this book in a long time.
Right.
And I was thinking about the process that I went through. And I think the way to look at this book, it's a memoir. And I also wanted to let people know that I did not have it easy. My path to now being a former White House press secretary was not easy. It was really tough. And, my parents came here for the American dream. And obviously the American dream is not a real thing. And it also, for some people, I shouldn't say that. I think for some people. I was going to
say, you don't believe that the
No.
American
I shouldn't say that. It looks different for people,
Gotcha.
Right? Like my parents still live check to check. But me becoming the White House press secretary, for them, that is the American dream.
Yeah.
That is why they came to this country, so that I could have the best and that their kids could have the best.
Right.
So it's not, they don't live in a multi-million-dollar home. They don't drive an expensive car, but I am living that dream for them.
Right.
And so that's why the American dream is defined very different for many people. And some people just don't get that sometimes, because we're living in a system that is created to make it very hard for people to succeed. That's just the reality that we're in. And we got to be really honest about that. And so moving forward is how I move forward from hardships, how I move forward to be where I am today. And it wasn't easy. And I want to also be able for people to see themselves in my story.
Yeah.
And if you could see yourself in my story, then hopefully I can show you how I've moved forward, how I've really been able to jump over hurdles to get to the other side of something incredibly difficult.
Okay, so what I found, because what I connected, I have a niece.
Yeah.
And I was very adamant. So to try to bring it up to speed, my mom died when I was 10 years old.
Yeah,
so I had to
sorry.
figure out what I was going to do with my life, right?
Yeah.
So I have a niece that she's getting ready to graduate. And because of my experience, I realized that you have to be that person to sort of know what you're going to do with life, because life comes at you like this.
Real fast.
And even though you're 15, 14, 17 years old, at least sort of have an inclination. And what I found interesting about your story is you had inclinations, but they were other people's perception of what you should be in life, from being the doctor and all of those things coming from those Haitian parents.
Totally.
And so then there was this moment where you was just bumping through life trying to figure out
That's
what
exactly
it was.
right. Yep.
So I feel like I connected with it in that way. Can you tell people a little bit about that whole journey for you?
Well, your niece is very lucky to have you. Let me just say that. Because it does take a village, and it does take a community. It does take people who love you and are willing to be there for you. So, my parents, immigrant parents, and they, in their minds, success was either being a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And so for me, they were like, you're going to be a doctor because that's going to be your success. Remember, they're trying to have a better life. That's why they came here. And so they really believed that was the step for me. And I believed it, right?
Yeah.
For many years through college, I thought, I'm going to be a doctor, did pre-med, did biology, did all of the things.
Right.
And when I graduated, I realized this wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And there were many reasons, there were many, like, it's very, very more nuanced than I'm laying out.
It's in the book.
Right. Pick up the book.
Pick up the book.
It's in the book. I go into details
Yes,
about
you
this
do.
particular period of my life, which was incredibly difficult. And I decided I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to be a doctor. And they were really disappointed. They were really heartbroken. And then I had to find my own path. But the beauty about it is they were supportive, right? As you're being supportive to your niece. It is so important. I was lucky to have that too. And I did. I kind of bumbled around. I kind of was like, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this. The thing that I did promise them was that I was going to continue school, even though I had a bachelor's degree. I was going to figure out, I was going to go get that second degree and figure out what I was going to do next. And so they were like, okay, let's see what you do. And I got mentors. I went to did some non-for-profit, got mentors. They were really, the two people that I worked for were really wonderful. I went to get my graduate degree. I got mentors there. And then that kind of led to me getting into politics. My parents were not happy about that. And I remember my parents are immigrants.
Right.
They grew up in Haiti. Haiti was a dictatorship. So politics for them
Was corruption.
was corruption, right? In their minds, they're like, okay, are you going to end up like on the street corner? Even though they understood they were living in a democracy,
Right.
and that was one of the reasons they moved here. And so, but they were nervous about this political piece. And then I did local politics. Then I went to do national politics. Went to work for Obama campaign in the general election. And when we won and made history in electing the first Black president and went into the White House, that's when they were like, wait, you're going to work in the White House for President Obama.
Right.
And that's when they were like so proud.
Right.
And they were like, we get it, right? We
Right.
get what you're trying to do here. And that's when it all opened up, really.
Right.
That's when it all opened up. But it took a minute. It took a minute. It wasn't easy, and it took a minute. And it's okay that it took a minute.
Okay, so before Obama, in the book,
Yeah.
I read the book.
Yeah,
so
I
can
know.
take
I
people through
see,
the book.
Mr.
See, listen,
Derek.
I try to be
I'm trying to see
prepared
if I
for
can
my
say
guest.
your name in French. Derek.
Oh, yeah, see,
Derek,
okay,
Derek.
Daddy. Okay, I go with it. Okay, so in the book, before Obama, though, you've had some people that were like
Interesting.
interesting people. That's a
Interesting, yeah,
great
yeah.
word for it.
Yeah, and I have a chapter in the book about that, about working.
I thought it was a great title for that
Yeah.
chapter.
And I wanted to be honest, right? It's
Yeah.
like in politics is a funny business.
Mm-hmm.
It is a funny business. You're working for someone else, but you're doing it in the hopes that they have a platform, they have an issue that you care about.
Yes.
And people are not perfect.
Yeah.
People can be really faulty, right? And sometimes when you wrap yourself around one person that you're working for, they will disappoint you.
Yeah.
And that's what happened,
Yeah.
right? And I worked for a couple of people that were, they
They
had
had questionable. But you know what?
But you did. I'll say, I'm sorry, Derek,
No,
before. But you try to not lose yourself.
Got you.
Right? In these jobs, in any job, you try to make sure that you have a foundation, that you're standing on solid ground, so that when you have to make difficult decisions or decisions about your career or your life, whatever it is, that you're doing it from a place of belief, and you have to stand for something.
Yeah.
I truly believe that, or you fall for anything, right? That's
Gotcha.
how that saying goes. And so that's what's important, because you don't know what somebody's going to do, right? You don't know what things may happen. And you just said life comes at you real fast.
Yeah. Okay. So to make it more interesting, because I really want people to read the book, to make it more interesting, I'm not going to tell the people that you work for. Since we haven't said their names, they're going to read the book. But these people were caught up in very high profile scandals, right?
Yeah.
And those were the end of careers.
Yeah, they were
Now-
career ending. They were career ending.
Now we live in
Yeah.
a time
Yeah.
where clearly
Yeah. Say it.
you can do
Say
pretty
it,
much
Derek.
anything.
Derek, say it.
And there is no end to
I
your
know.
career. What do you think changed?
It's a good question. I think so many things have changed in where I was when I was like baby Karine going through politics to now veteran Karine, having done what I've done. I think social media, I talked about fact checking. I think that COVID, I think so many things have changed, how we consume information, how information comes to us. And also, we've all been traumatized, not just as a country, but as a world. And I think all of that has caused, people to just be in a different space than they are today. And we are just living in a different world.
Yeah.
Very much different world. And I also believe things that were said quietly, whether it's racism, sexism, misogyny, that existed, don't get me wrong, it existed,
Right.
but it was said a little bit more quietly or done a little bit more differently. Now it's just out there.
Right.
And we have just touched on a nerve that people are just responding to.
Yeah.
And it is, we have a lot of work to do. As we're talking about politics, the Democratic Party has a lot of work to do and figure out how do we message, how do we get our voices out there, how are we missing this?
Right.
And you have someone on the other side who's very good at messaging and getting their stuff out there and touching on issues that are hot wire issues, but somehow moves people. And so we are living in a world that is quite daunting.
Okay, so my thing about that is when you talk about messaging in the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
so I feel like the other party, especially when election time was coming,
Yeah.
if you sit in a room and you play Ave Maria, what messaging is that? So when we have these people that love to say the Democrats aren't doing the messaging, they're not doing the messaging. I know that Kamala was telling people that she was trying to get them tax credits for children,
Yep, she was.
for homeowners.
was.
How is it that people keep saying and they blame it on us as though we're not doing the messaging?
Yep. I think it was a lot of things.
I
I think there's misinformation, disinformation played a big role,
Right.
I think that played a really, really big role. I think that there was an economy piece of it because we saw that in the G7, G10 countries. Like there was being in the incumbent actually was harmful to us.
Gotcha.
It really was because people were still feeling pain. They were still feeling the harm of the economy of coming out of COVID, and they didn't want to hear that we were doing better. They didn't. And so I think it was just a domino effect of what was happening globally here in the States. And I do think we got to talk about it. Racism, misogyny, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And so you have all of these things played into what we saw in those 3 months of the election. It truly is. I don't think it was just one thing. I think it was multiple scenarios. And when you have millions of people staying home and not coming out to vote, you got to question. You got to figure out why did that happen? And you have to kick the tires. You got to look under the hood. You got to really do some self-reflection and say, okay, what happened here?
Right.
What happened here? Because you can't excuse it away. You can't.
Okay. So,
And I do think, just to be clear, I think Kamala Harris, the vice president, did a phenomenal job.
Especially
I do
with
think
what
she
she
did
had.
a phenomenal job in what she had to overcome and take on in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take that away from her.
Yeah.
I do think that we as a country, there's a lot of things we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And what happened.
Yeah, I agree, and I stand on it. I think a lot of it was misogyny and sexism, just plain out.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody won't agree with me, and that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
I think it was part of it. I think to deny that and not take that seriously and not question that is the wrong way to look at it.
I agree. Okay, so in your book, you also talk about having an eye for who has the charisma and who is that next up and coming person.
Yeah.
And so, there are a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's the Josh Shapiros, the
Yeah.
Wes Moore. So
Yeah.
who do you see?
I don't know. We'll have to. I think what's important is that we have a bench. We do, which is really good. We have a bench of incredibly talented people who are senators, governors out there, and who knows who else is out there that can jump in. I think that we have work to do internally as a party. I think that we need to see leadership across the board. I want to see more voices. I want to see Democrats speaking out loud and just being very clear about telling the American people what's going on and how do we move forward. I think there's an opportunity for everyone. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's just one person. I do believe as we get closer to the election in a couple of years, the presidential election, there will be a standout. Mm-hmm. And, but you don't wait then.
Yeah.
You got to speak out now.
Yeah.
Because we are in a constitutional crisis. This is a 5-alarm fire.
Right.
It's not coming. It's here right now. And so I want to hear those leaders speaking in clear voices very, very loudly now. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be an elected official.
Right.
You don't. You could be a leader in your community. And what I'm seeing is that leaders in their community are now focusing in their community right now because people need help and they need guidance. And I think that's important too. You don't have to be a national political leader. Like you can just look around, look into your community, look at your neighbors and figure out, okay, what is my space and my place here? How do I get involved in this 5-alarm fire that we are currently in?
Okay, so for someone that has seen politics so up close, I mean, on top of it.
In my face.
In your face. So and then there's
living and breathing it.
Right. And then there are us regular people that are just bombarded with it on the news. What do you do to quiet your nerves and bring you some type of peace? What is it that you're using? Like certain people say, "Oh, I'm dependent on the Supreme Court or whatever." What little gems are you using to make you feel comfortable that we can survive this?
I mean, I am not comfortable that we can survive this. I'm not. What is happening is our institutions are under attack. There is a wrecking ball that has been just, thrown at the government, the federal government.
And Karine, you just scared because
look, the courts are certainly going to have to step in.
Right.
We'll see when it gets to the Supreme Court and some of this issue, what happens. But the courts obviously need to step in. But we are seeing some institutions that are bending the knee.
Right.
And that's scary.
And it's scaring.
That's scary.
They've been also arresting judges.
Yeah,
now.
they've been arresting.
So,
that's scary.
So, yeah.
That just happened a couple of days ago. Look, that's what leads to a dictatorship. Look, I have 2 parents who grew up in a dictatorship. We got to be really, really clear about this. We have a man who is sitting in the White House who is not afraid to say how much they adore a dictator like Putin.
Yeah.
This is who looks up to that. This is what is happening right now.
Yeah.
And so I am very fearful. And look, I think that the people who are going to save us are the people, the American people. We need to be really clear and very loud and fight back and not let our neighbors or the people you love be under attack. And that's it. Do it in a peaceful way. Right? You do have to do that. But we have to be standing up very loud and clear. We can't think that institutions are going to save us right now.
Right.
Because this person, the president of the United States, is attacking institutions.
Right.
And some of them are capitulating.
Yeah.
So
well, you talked about
we got to be real. We got to be real about where we are. We got to be real.
During the first his first administration, that what brought you out of the depression a little bit was seeing the Women's March.
Yeah.
And seeing the people
It was
stand up.
amazing. The Women's March in 2017, that January, that inauguration day, January 20th in 2017, I remember because I was doing MSNBC and I was on the rooftop of where they were doing their coverage. And I actually was at the time with, I believe, Joy Reid. She was hosting a show. And it was dark. We were all feeling pretty dark. And let's not forget, President Trump's speech at that time was so dark. Mm-hmm. It was about carnage. Yeah. And you look out you know, and you see a march that is filled with women coming out and saying, no.
Yeah, we can do this.
We can do this. We can do this. I mean, so that January in 2017, when we saw that march and the juxtaposition of the march of, you know, women coming out, coming together and saying, no way, a bigger march than what was at the attendance of the inauguration, it gave me hope. It gave me hope. And let's not forget, that first weekend was the Muslim ban.
Yeah.
And what did you see? You saw people showing up at airports, lawyers, protesters showing up at airports, fighting for folks who could not get back into the country. And so you saw people coming together loud and clear and saying, no, this is not who we are or who we should be.
Okay, so you work part of you have a whole chapter dedicated to your time with the Obamas. With President Obama.
Yeah.
While working in that administration, do you feel that you, like, after you see we get our first black president, and you see not only does he get elected once, but he gets elected twice.
Yeah.
Do you go into this thing that the world has, like, for us to see the rise of racism and the way the world is now, did you fall into how far the world has come, or were you very aware that this was a moment in time?
This was a moment in time. Well, let's not take it for granted. 1,000%. You know, when President Obama won in 2008, there was this kind of talk about post-racial era, and I never fell for that.
Gotcha.
Right? I think that we are a young democracy, a young country, and there's still a lot more work to be done. I think it was amazing that we were able to come together and elect Obama not just once, but twice. But I do think it's that moment in time. We will not, I don't think I will see another Obama in my lifetime, right?
Really?
It was like once in a generation. I truly believe that.
Wow.
And it was a moment. It was a moment, a great moment. And I mean, we elected President Obama, and then we elected President Trump. I mean, that tells you like how the pendulum swings and how history plays out.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing, I felt really proud and truly blessed to have been able to be part of the Obama-Biden administration, to be part of that general election, and to have worked in that White House, and to be part of history. And I will never forget that. And it definitely was part of my trajectory into my career politically full time. And so, I do think it was a moment. I think that we as a country have a lot that we have to atone and speak to. Whether it is Native Americans and what happened to Native Americans, to slavery, right? Jim Crow. I mean, we have a lot in our history that we cannot forget.
Gotcha.
And we can also not forget, history has a way of repeating itself.
True that.
And when you're seeing someone who is supposed to be, I mean, just think of you're president of the United States. What are you supposed to be doing? You're supposed to be protecting people. You're supposed to be living to our best abilities as a country. And what is happening is freedoms are being attacked. Vulnerable people are being attacked. Freedoms are being taken away. Institutions are being destroyed. That's scary.
Yeah.
And that is very reminiscent.
Yeah.
If we do not know our history, we will repeat it.
Which is why they're trying to erase it.
And it's being erased.
Yeah.
Books are being banned.
Yeah.
This is
stuff pulled out of museums.
Stuff being pulled out of museums. I mean, right? And so that's why when you go back to the Obama years, you're just kind of like, yeah, no, that was a moment in time.
Yeah.
We were not in a post-racial era.
Well, clearly. We see it now,
right?
for sure. But
right?
they led us to believe that that's
right,
where we were headed.
But we should have been hopeful, but we can't forget that we have to continue to fight. I saw a Coretta Scott King quote today, and I don't want to, I'm gonna butcher it, but please look this up. It says how you know, it's something about how freedom, you don't win. You don't like win freedom, right? Every generation has to fight for it. Every generation has to fight for our freedom.
Right.
That was the quote. And it's true. right? And even in that time of the Obama years, like we have to fight for it every generation. You just don't win it.
Yeah.
It's not, you know,
It's not an inherited
it's
thing
not
that
an,
you just
right. It's not an
automatically
inherited
get
thing.
because the people before
Every
you.
generation has to fight for it.
Yeah.
What we hope for is that we learn from our ancestors. We learn from the people before us. We learn from the generation before us and how they have set the path for us to be where we are. I always say, even the first time I was at the podium and the last time I was at the podium in the White House press secretary, that I knew that I was standing on many shoulders.
Yeah.
People before me.
I was going to say, did that ever, like, how did you take that in, that you had made history, but not only as a black woman in that space, but as a queer woman in that space?
Yeah.
How did you take that in? And I also want to ask, when did you realize that you wanted to be that open and not be afraid that that was going to work against you?
So being openly queer is something that I have been my entire adult life.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's the way my parents raised me.
Right.
I don't know what it is. I've always wanted to be my true self. And maybe deciding not to go to become a doctor, maybe it all played in trying to find myself.
Right.
And I've always wanted to be my true self. Understanding, and I want to be very sensitive about this, I know that there are people who probably will never be able to feel like they could be their true self. So I feel lucky that I'm able to do that because there are people out there, it is very hard for them to come out. It is very hard to live in the true self that they want to see. And so I understand that. I don't want to, I will never push people to come out or to take the path that I have taken because I know I am lucky to have. It's not, yeah, and it's not easy. It is not easy. It's not been easy for me, and it is not easy. But that's just part of who I've. It's almost like in my DNA. It's just part of who I am, right? I mean, look, I come from. My parents come from Haiti, 1804. We were the first Black republic, and we kind of led a revolution so that other brown and Black countries and islands were able to fight for their own revolution. So I don't know if it comes from that. It's in your blood. It's in my blood. Let's be, Haitian history is also Black history. So we got to learn that history too, for sure, as well, because it is embedded in all of us. Yeah. And so I don't know where that came from, but it's something that has been embedded in me for a long time. And so I've always wanted to make sure that I was true to myself. And when I became the first, I think I'm also still processing that because you're so living in the moment. Right. But what I understood was that I had to be thankful to the people before me, that I did not do this on my own. I am not that brilliant where I was like, I got here by myself. And it would be disingenuous for me to do that. Right. I would be forgetting all of the people before me. Yeah. There are these two, and I'm going to call them out, two Black women who were part of the White House press corps, like 75 years ago, Ethel Payne and Alice Dunnigan. And they did that at a time where they were under attack. The two first Black women that were in that White House press corps. Wow. And they were journalists. They were part of that that press corps. And I think about them, right? I think about what they went through.
Do you remember your first day at the podium? What was going through your mind that first day you get up there?
So the first time I was at the podium I was the principal deputy press secretary, and I was scared. I was nervous. And I remember Jen Psaki was like, look, you got to do this at some point. So, we're going to get you ready and you're going to do it. Right. And I really appreciated her doing that because she was really wanting for me to be the next press secretary after her. And so did the president. And so did many people who supported me, which I appreciate. And so it was scary, right? I mean, you show up and, it is not a love fest that's happening. Right. It is work, right? It is, the press corps is supposed to hold you into account for what the White House, this administration is doing, what your boss is doing.
So every day, when you go in there, are you like, Lord, this again? Because that's what I would feel like if I had the job. I'd be like, Lord, not again today. And then the people because there's probably some that are kind to you, but there are some that are just like, I'm waiting to eat her up.
It's not supposed to be fun, right? It is not. It is not. You don't say yes to this job because you're about to have it real good. Right. You say yes to the job because you believe in the process,
administration.
you believe in the administration, you believe in a democracy, because that's what's happening when you're standing at that lectern, at that podium, is you're exercising what freedom, what democracy is. Truly. And not just, it's being televised, not just in America, but globally. And it is an exercise in democracy. And that is what's so beautiful about it. That's why it was so important to me. Remember, my parents came from a dictatorship. They came to this country because of what they believed was available or could be available to them, because of freedom, because of democracy, because of the history of this country and what we have seen our ancestors, Black Americans, go through. And so there was an opportunity here. And so what I got to do is show that, right? And I got to be, as this Black woman with natural hair, Derek gets to do my hair, and I love when he does my hair. It always looks amazing.
Oh, thank you.
You are brilliant. You're so brilliant. But I have to call you out. I have to call you out for that. But with my natural hair, you know, this Black woman, dark-skinned Black woman, I get to, an immigrant as well, I got to stand at that podium behind that lectern, and people got to visually see what President Biden believed he wanted to be representing him.
Yeah.
And that is a big deal. That's a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
That is a huge deal, because no one ever looked like me before. I was number 35. The 34 before me did not look like me.
Yeah.
And it was a message that the Biden-Harris administration was sending. Very clear message.
Yeah.
We want people to feel like they are being seen.
Yeah.
We want people to know that everybody has a seat at the table. And by the way, this is the person that is going to represent my administration at this podium.
What is your proudest moment from working with the Biden administration?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's been so many. Honestly, I got to be present for so much history. Ketanji Brown Jackson, you know, I wasn't the press secretary at the time, but being there for that was pretty amazing. And just so many, we got a lot of things done, whether it is like making sure, you know, like communities, brown and Black communities, felt safe because of the work that we were able to do, lowering costs for people that were suffering, making that happen, and being able to do that at the podium, getting Brittany Griner home. I mean, there was so much that really mattered to me that I was able to be part of, that I will never forget. And I think representation, seeing that representation at the White House, whether you were part of the Latino community, the Black community, the gay community, you know, the disabled community. I mean, it was something that was celebrated and understood, and I got to be part of that. And there was a lot of history made in this administration, only 4 years, and I'm really, really proud of that. Today is the 537th briefing of the Biden-Harris administration. This is my 306th briefing and the final briefing of the administration. I do want to say thank you to President Biden and First Lady Dr. Biden for this incredible opportunity. As I said earlier, standing at this podium behind this lectern, serving the American people and this administration has been an honor of a lifetime. And I will be forever grateful to the president for his trust and this amazing opportunity.
I'm proud of you too. People don't know this, but they know it if they read the book, that your mom was a hairstylist and owned a salon. So when people wonder why are you on Behind the Scenes Beauty, it's because you come from beauty.
I do.
Beauty
You're right.
roots.
You're right. My mom had her own salon and did it on the weekends. She had like multiple jobs. But one of the jobs, and that I think
practitioner too.
She was a nurse. Yeah, she was a home health care aide, and so. But I think the job that she loved the most, she always loved helping people, was having her own, being a small business owner.
Yes.
She was so proud of that. And that's another thing we did in the administration, is make sure that people had opportunities and were able to live their dreams, and made it easy for vulnerable people who were not, like brown and Black communities. Like, you know what, if you want to own a business, we're going to make it easy for you to do that, or easier for you to do that. And so, so beauty was a huge part. You know, how I represented myself, how I looked, that comes from my mom, right? That comes like how I dressed. And, you know, in the world that we're both in, the visual medium
Means a lot.
means a lot. People see you before they hear you.
That is so true.
And that is something that I learned from my mom. People saw me. That's why when I was at the podium, I always tried to look my best because people saw me before they even heard me.
Yeah.
And so how I represented the president, how I represented the country was a big deal.
You represented, because we would always be like, oh, she looks so pretty up there, and that hair is looking so good.
And also, I worked for people who were dapper. I mean, the president was dapper.
Oh, yes.
His suits.
Yes.
And the first lady, I was like, okay, so I can't be just rolling out of bed and just
Right.
like, so I really put time into that. And I was representing so many communities and
Yeah.
I wanted them to be proud.
Yeah.
I wanted them to be proud.
Well, we were proud.
Thank you.
So my last question
Okay,
that I
yes.
ask all of my guests
Okay.
is...
Derek.
Yes.
Yes.
What does Karine Jean Pierre find beauty in?
Ooh, my gosh, that's a good question.
I always am surprised because you know who told me my question was horrible? Raven Simone. She was the very first person I asked this question to, and she told me my question was horrible.
No, I don't think it's horrible. Raven, no.
She did.
And I love you, Raven.
And I love Raven to this day. But I
no.
said, she said, oh, it's boring.
No,
I said, I think
no. I think it's nuanced and very layered. One of the things that I have tried to do as it relates to beauty and taking care of myself since I've left the White House was self-care. And self-care is connected to beauty, right? Like making sure that I'm getting sleep, making sure that I have beauty products that makes me happy and does the things that I want it to do for my skin, right? Drinking water, lots of water, making sure my hair, like all of that, the self-care, because how I look matters to me. And I'm not wearing makeup like I used to every day. I barely put makeup on every day, and I'm very happy about that. But I want my skin to look good.
Right.
I want my hair to feel healthy. I want my nail, and it is really self-care is embedded in that beauty.
Right.
Because that's what the drinking water, the getting sleep, the making sure like my daily routine is working. That is embedded in my beauty and in my health and all of that. Like how, behind the scenes beauty. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And it makes me feel good, and it's all connected, right? How I feel about myself, how I wake up in the morning, how I move around the world, or it is like the beauty self-care is so connected to me, for me.
Yeah. I know I said that was my last question, but I have this last question.
Okay.
And I promise there's no more
Derek,
questions.
what is your last question?
My last question. I always do that when I ask a question because you spark stuff in me and it makes me think of another question.
It's good.
But this is really literally my last one. So the book is called Moving Forward.
Yes.
In the book, you talk about how politics is so it's a small time job. Meaning you're here for 4 years, you move to the next thing, you never know what. So now that you've left, what's next?
So
Karine,
what's next? So I am currently finishing up a book. It's my new book that's coming out in the fall.
Okay.
So people should look out for that. I'm not going to say anything more.
Okay.
Because I will have more to share, but I have a new book that's coming out in the fall, which is, I think, very important for this moment and the time that we're in. So I'm focusing on that, and I'm focusing on my little girl. I have a beautiful 10-year-old who I have missed so much in the sense of spending all my time that I can with her. And so we've been having a great time. I have my mom that I'm trying to take care of with my siblings, and I'm a caregiver, so I'm doing that. And then I feel like everything else will come. Everything else will come. So I am living a good life. I am doing self-care. And I do want to figure out, this is something that I do want to figure out, what is my space, what my space is going to be as we're living in reality, this very scary reality, but we got to be hopeful. And I do want to say there's a lot of joy in resistance, so let's not forget that. But I do want to figure out what is going to be my world in this new reality that we live in, like what's going to be my part in this. So I'm trying to figure that out too.
Well, I'm sure God will show it to you.
That I'm very confident in that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Karine.
Thank you,
It's
Derek.
been amazing. And where can we find you? Where do people look out for things?
So I mean, look, I have Moving Forward. The paperback version of that book is coming out on May 20th. So get that. Get the paperback, get the hardcover book, whichever you please. There's an audio version of the book. Get that as well. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm very heavily on Instagram, K_Jean Pierre. So catch me there, and I'll be around. I've been a little quiet, but I'll be popping back up.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're looking for you some TV opportunities or something, maybe.
I'll be out there.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to click like and subscribe. We thank you so much.
Thanks.